With yet another Stanley Cup Final in the Sunshine State, has Florida become a hockey hotbed? Hey everyone, Rob Wong, pleased to be joined by Postmedia features writer Stephen Sandor, who is in Sunrise, Florida, keeping an eye on everything going on around the Stanley Cup Final. And Stephen, this is nothing new, a Florida team playing in the Cup Final with the Panthers there for a third consecutive year. We, of course, remember the Lightning going on their Cup runs a few years ago. There was a time, though, where these teams did have trouble wooing free agents, but now it seems like there's some of the first teams players have atop their destinations. What, in your opinion, has changed?
Well, yeah, it's actually 6 years in a row. Lightning 3 years in a row conference champions, and now the Panthers. So definitely the East. They are the beasts of the East, right? And the state of Florida is where the Stanley Cup road goes to the state of Florida, whether they win it or not. There's been a huge change. In Florida, it's ownership of the team, but as well, it's been a big demographic change. The demographic change has been huge. Florida's population has increased by a whopping 2 million people since 2020. It is the fastest growing state in the United States. Since COVID, basically people started realizing, hey, I can work from home. And that means I don't have to be by my office. And why do I live in some cold weather place? Why, if I'm just going to work from home, why don't I live in Florida? So you can imagine 2 million people. Florida's that's about a 10% rise of their population in just 4 years. It is like the Alberta of the United States, where everyone seems to be moving here. And of course, a lot of those people are coming from places like Boston, Michigan, New York State, other parts of New England, Minnesota, places that love hockey. And that I talked to some rec hockey players on Sunday night. I went and watched some games at the Panthers ice stand at what used to be their practice facility, and they still financially support it. And they talked about the influx of people and the influx of hockey fans coming into the region. And of course, the other couple of elements, at least with the Florida Panthers, is they just built a $65 million practice facility, a medical facility, and this place. The player in Fort Lauderdale, the players live all around it. They bike to practice, or they have golf carts they take to practice, or Vespas. They've created this real hockey community amongst their team, and that's why players want to go there as well. Not a lot of media pressure. Like, the team's going well, but let's face it, they're not the Miami Dolphins. They're not the University of Miami Hurricanes. I mean, when you're out and about in Miami, there's two things that you see sports-wise, like in the billboards, the placards. You see Lionel Messi at Inter Miami. You see a lot of Lionel Messi, and you see University of Miami. Those are the big shows here, and that's a big part of it. And I guess the last part of the piece, which is both the Lightning and the Panthers, is Florida has no state income tax, no inheritance tax, and no tax on investments. So meaning your stocks, bonds, there's no tax, at least to the state. I mean, there's federal tax you pay in the United States, but there's no state tax on any of your investments. So if you're a wealthy person, wow, that's a lot more take-home money for you. But meanwhile, the team does say that it's not an issue, even though it looks like it might be an issue for the next collective bargaining agreement, because there are teams in very high tax regime places. Montreal Canadiens would be the first one you think of, where the players are paying 25% provincial tax. That definitely would say, hey, this really distorts the playing field amongst the teams, that there are tax havens like Florida that make it much more attractive for players to play there.
Yeah, as you mentioned, the cap conversation, definitely a big one right now amongst media and fans. We'll see if it ends up becoming a conversation with the NHL in a couple of years with the CBA. So the Panthers and the Lightning, they've been around since the early 90s. They've had various runs of success. They're on a big one right now, of course, as we just touched on. We remember back in the 90s, though, it was sort of the Wayne Gretzky effect with him going to Los Angeles, and we saw the boon with teams out on the West Coast. And maybe we're seeing that now in some ways, as you mentioned, Steve, here in the East Coast with the Iceplex that the Panthers have built here. From what you've been able to gather in your short amount of time there with the Cup Final, do you feel as though hockey is starting to become a bit more of the culture, despite the Lionel Messi impact or the Miami Dolphins? Is hockey finding its own little niche at the moment?
I think we have to remember, with the Gretzky effect, how rushed the NHL was with its expansion, especially in some of these cities. They weren't ready. And the fans, these were the people I was speaking to at the arena on Sunday night. Some of them were season ticket holders, longtime Floridians who are hockey fans. They didn't really have an arena in Florida for them to play in. They played in the Miami arena, which wasn't really suited for hockey. They had a terrible practice facility out in Pompano Beach. Just like the Tampa Bay Lightning played, remember at the Thunderdome? They played those games back in the 90s. They didn't have proper arenas, but the NHL was so quick to want to push into the Sun Belt and into the South that these teams actually started playing really in cities before the cities were ready for them. And in a lot of ways, it's kind of like Utah is right now, right? With this rushed move from Arizona to Utah, that's a basketball arena they're playing in with a lot of obstructed view seats where you can't see the whole ice surface, kind of like the old arena in Phoenix used to be. But in this case, it took time for these teams to get their buildings built, the agreements with the states to build their practice facilities. And I got to let you know, like, for anyone who's not been out here, and this is the first time I've been out to this arena, it is nowhere near Miami, right? I mean, it is like the Ottawa Senators being out in Canada. Like, you are not even in Fort Lauderdale. You're in Sunrise. Driving from Miami Airport with no traffic will take you 40 minutes to get to this arena on highways that have really high speed limits, right? I mean, everything like the greater Miami area is all about sprawl. 6.5 million people spread over, I don't know how many cities and counties connected by interstates. And it has to build its own community in the Fort Lauderdale area, because this is a team that really belongs more to Fort Lauderdale than it does to Miami. And I think that was another part of its identity, where it can be seen as that area's team. I think in Miami, they were always, they're never going to surpass the University of Miami or the Dolphins as something that people really gravitate around. Like, just take a look at how hard it is for the Miami Marlins to grab hold of people's imaginations. But up here, they have, well north of the Miami proper, they've kind of built a niche for themselves. But this rink does really feel like a throwback to like a different time in the suburbs, surrounded by giant parking lot. Like kind of like how the arenas used to be in the United States. Maybe this is the last kind of hurrah for an arena like this, but we are far, far away from the bright lights of Miami here.
Well, we'll see what kind of impact the Panthers can have down the road on this community. Winning another cup definitely would not hurt their chances of doing that. Stephen, we appreciate the time.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Stephen.